I'm not gonna lie, I like this idea a lot. Full disclosure, we are recording this audio on the night of Thursday, August 6th, so if this player or the team that we're talking about, the Montreal Canadiens, end up making a signing before the time this video gets public on YouTube, then we'll retcon it later on in today's show. This is just the early morning segment as pre-recorded the night before. Today, I wanted to talk about free agent forward Vladimir Tarasenko, a guy that I genuinely think probably fits as a Montreal Canadiens free agent target. Now, I'm not just pulling this out of thin air. The reason we're talking about Tarasenko is because he was one of the names discussed on the Sick podcast with Jimmy Murphy as to whether or not the Montreal Canadiens should go out there and give him a shot. But Tarasenko, at the time of recording this audio, is still an unrestricted free agent. He's 34 years old, 6 feet, 218, a left-handed guy, and he's kind of at the tail end of his career. You know, I say that saying that he's, mid-30s, right? Obviously, players tend to age out and retire by the time they hit 37, 38, 39. If you last a little longer than that, you're kind of the exception to the rule, right? Tarasenko, though, is putting himself in a position where we could reasonably say, with the level of talent that he still possesses and what he's capable of bringing to an NHL team, he's aging pretty smoothly into his mid-30s over here. And I feel like just the way Tarasenko plays and the things that he needs in his game in order to be successful, these are things that are not going to age out all too quickly. Tarasenko is a player who relies on his shooting, his positioning, his awareness with the puck, not necessarily foot speed or brute physicality. And it's why, last season with the Minnesota Wild, Vladimir Tarasenko actually had a pretty strong year, 47 points and 23 goals in 75 games played. Not to mention the fact that he was half a point a game in the Stanley Cup Playoffs as the Minnesota Wild made it to the second round against Colorado. This was the first 20-goal season that Tarasenko had since 2023-2024, wherein he had scored a total of 23 goals in, 57 plus 19, that's 76 games split between the Senators and the Florida Panthers. Heck, this season was pretty good too. Honestly speaking, 55 total points, with 41 of those coming in 57 games with the Senators. Vladimir Tarasenko, despite the fact that he is in his mid-30s, is still a very legit middle-to-top six scorer. Sure, his best season was a while ago, 82 points in 75 games played, 34 goals, but Tarasenko, when you just look at the holistic body of work here, after some of the struggles he had with injury in the early 2020s, he has fully come back and is better than ever, and still continuously producing well into this age range. He's a Russian dude. He is still looking for a team, and all I gotta question is whether or not the Montreal Canadiens would actually benefit from getting this kind of a guy. Think about it. The Canadiens need a second-line center. That much is true. We understand that that's been one of the biggest needs the Habs have had for many years now. And while Tarasenko doesn't play center, he would provide a really nice ability for the Montreal Canadiens to isolate Ivan Demidov with another top six caliber winger who literally speaks his language. We've had all this talk about Alexander Zhuravsky coming over to the Montreal Canadiens and doing something with Demidov on the second line. While Zhuravsky is still over there in Russia, why not have Tarasenko be a mentor for the young Demidov instead? We've been seeing that there is this sort of Russian movement within the Montreal Canadiens organization over the years, from Ivan Demidov to Alexander Zhuravsky to Gleb Pugachev. There's a lot to like out of Russia from Montreal Canadiens hockey perspectives here. But I'm even going to go out there and say that if you wanted to build on that Russian good faith in Montreal, you got to go back to Ilya Kovalchuk back in what was it, Nick Suzuki's rookie campaign, when Kovalchuk suited up with the Montreal Canadiens and he had 13 points in 22 games? When Ilya Kovalchuk stuck around with the Habs and started to score the points that he was scoring, reviving his career, it set the city on fire with excitement and passion, and Kovalchuk himself was saying, yeah, like, I love it here. It is so great playing for this fan base, and even though the team was not really doing all too well, I will always cherish my time with Montreal. It's why they were able to get some pretty good assets for Kovalchuk, sending him to the Capitals before they went into the Stanley Cup Playoffs. Now, Tarasenko, I don't want to say he's going through the exact same thing that Kovalchuk was going through. Tarasenko was coming off of a much better stint heading into the 26-27 season, but I do think if the Canadiens are interested in adding a really interesting middle to top six scoring option, Tarasenko would be one of the better ones available. This article by Gabriel Sammy on HabsFanatics.com goes out there and talks about how there's definitely a fit, as Tarasenko was floated as a low-cost Canadiens target. This cites the Jimmy Murphy commentary on The Sick Show. He floated an interesting idea involving Kent Hughes and the Habs. What if Tarasenko became a target for the Canadiens? Murphy believes there would definitely be a fit. At 34, Tarasenko can still produce and he knows how to play within a top six. His season, previously, 47 points, 75 games with the Wild, that's a very respectable level of production. Several factors could make this signing appealing to Kent Hughes. Tarasenko is a fellow Russian who could help the young Ivan Demidov, while his agent, Dan Milstein, has a good relationship with the Canadiens organization. That could make potential discussions much easier. Tarasenko could give the Canadiens a low-cost, top-six scoring boost. He wouldn't arrive as a savior, and he wouldn't face the pressure of carrying the team on his shoulders. That's exactly what makes his situation so intriguing. When a player with that much talent becomes a team's fifth or sixth best forward, he starts to look like a valuable luxury, especially since he's currently available in the open market as a UFA. Less pressure and more offensive freedom. That type of environment could help Tarasenko regain his confidence, especially alongside Ivan Demidov. His addition would fill an important hole in the top six. Tarasenko has scored more than 20 goals in a season 8 times over his career, and it likely wouldn't cost much to sign him. Should the Habs take a chance on Tarasenko? Now, for what it's worth, if you go over to the Twitter post itself, the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinero, there are a number of replies that are interesting, talking about the idea on Tarasenko. I'll be extremely disappointed if the Habs start the season with the same roster as last year. Well, guess what? Adding a name like Tarasenko would certainly add a lot more into the fold here. You could move Alex Newhook to center again, and you could have maybe, I don't know, Jake Evans taking those second-line draws. Heck, if you really wanted to get that Russian thing set up, sign Tarasenko to a multi-year deal. Wait till Alexander Zhuravsky comes over at the end of this upcoming year, move Demidov to center, and then have a Tarasenko-Demidov-Zhuravsky line. How does that sound? Okay, I gotta take off my franchise mode be a GM hat for now, because I know my ideas are definitely interesting, but yeah, I know a lot of folks seem to disagree with them. Either way, you can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'm always fond of the idea of Russians coming over to Montreal, especially Vladimir Tarasenko, considering how good he still is capable of being at the National Hockey League level. I mean, he had that one down year with Detroit. Some of us thought, oh, maybe he's a little bit washed, but nah, it's just the Red Wings. They're just bad. He goes over to Minnesota and is genuinely good. If he goes over to Montreal, genuinely good team, he could feed off of some Noah Dobson second-line power play unit passes, right? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about the idea of Tarasenko over to the Habs? I hope you enjoyed this video. Sign on, and bye.